Well, just like I promised you, I'm only having one drink.
Everyone thought Dean Martin's drunk act was just part of the show. Smooth, funny, and untouchable. But one shocking TV appearance proved it wasn't all an act at all.
How'd all these people get in your room?
After losing his beloved son in a tragic plane crash, Dean spiraled hard.
All seriousness, I feel sorry for you people that don't drink. I mean it, because when you wake up in the morning, that's as good as you're going to feel all day.
The bottle stopped being a prop and became his only escape. On that live broadcast, he could barely stand straight. The cool, charming crooner everyone adored suddenly looked lost. His slurred jokes faded into something darker, the kind of pain no script could hide. The producers panicked, ready to cut to commercial, but Dean waved them off. He wasn't done.
Tell us what we don't know about Dean Martin.
Let's see. What you maybe didn't know about him is that, that drinking bit was just a gift.
Then came the moment that froze the entire studio. He spoke from a place so raw that even the cameras seemed to hesitate. The man the world knew as Hollywood's smoothest entertainer was gone. In his place stood a broken soul, drowning in grief and whiskey. It became one of television's most haunting moments ever. Dean Martin, born Dino Paul Crocetti, entered this world on June 7th, 1917, in a tiny two-room apartment above a shoemaker's shop in Steubenville, Ohio. His parents, Gaetano and Angela, were Italian immigrants chasing the American dream with almost nothing to their names. Gaetano worked 12-hour days as a barber for just $18 a week, while Angela scrubbed floors and washed strangers' clothes to keep a roof over their heads. They didn't even have running water. The family shared a single outdoor toilet with 3 other families in the same yard. Dinner was often nothing more than bread, pasta, and whatever vegetables they could grow in their small patch of dirt. Survival was the only goal. Little Dino didn't speak English until he was 5, and when he finally did, kids at Grant Elementary mocked his heavy Italian accent. His older brother had to sit in class with him just to help translate still. Dino never felt like he belonged. By 13, he'd had enough of school. He told his mom straight up he needed to make real money. So he started hustling, running bootleg whiskey across the Ohio River for 50 cents a night. By 14, he was deep in the numbers racket, collecting bets from steel mill workers who'd gamble their entire paychecks. He shined shoes at the country club, stocked shelves, pumped gas, and tossed newspapers before sunrise. By 15, he even lied about his age to work night shifts at the steel mill, earning $1.25 an hour. Every dollar was survival money. Every shift drained him. Every job toughened him. That's why Dean would later say, easy does it, because he had already lived through the hard way. Around that same time, he started fighting. Literally, he took on the nickname Kid Crochet and began stepping into underground boxing clubs across the Ohio Valley. Between 1932 and 1936, he fought 36 matches, winning 25 and losing 11. He didn't have money for gloves or hand wraps, so he fought bare-knuckled. His hands shattered, his nose broke, and that crooked smile people loved, it came from a busted lip that never healed right. He joked later, I won all but 11. But behind the humor was a lifetime of bruises. Every hit left a mark, inside and out. In 1936, during one brutal fight at Steubenville Memorial Auditorium, 19-year-old Dino took a devastating rabbit punch to the head. He hit the floor face first and stopped breathing. The crowd went silent. It took nearly 5 minutes to revive him, and when he finally woke up, he was vomiting blood and couldn't even remember his own name. Doctors told him flat out, one more blow like that could kill him. He spent 3 days in the hospital, staring down his own mortality. And when the $47 bill came, his family couldn't pay it. That was his breaking point. Dino walked away from the ring for good. No more boxing, no more near-death fights. But the pain he carried from that world would never really leave him. From that day forward, Dean Martin dropped the gloves and picked up the mic, and he never looked back. By 17, in 1934, he was already crooning in shady Steubenville clubs while secretly dealing blackjack in the back rooms. The smoky air, the clinking glasses, the dim lights, it all became his new stage. The crowds loved him, and he modeled his sound after Harry Mills from the Mills Brothers, charming everyone with that velvet tone, tips reined in, and for the first time, Dino saw a way out of the grind. Then came the real break. In 1935, bandleader Ernie McKay hired him for a whopping $75 a week, a small fortune during the Great Depression. Dean sang everywhere, and at the Walker House, at the Rex cigar store, at any joint that would let him perform. His voice was smooth and calm, the total opposite of the chaos he'd grown up in. That calmness wasn't an act. It was survival turned into style. But behind the microphone was another secret hustle. At just 17, Dean also worked as an ER at the Rex cigar store, which, truth be told, was a front for an illegal casino run by the Kula crime family. From 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., he spun the roulette wheel, pulling in $30 a week plus tips that tripled what he'd ever made at the mill. When gamblers lost big, he'd sing a little tune to cool them off. When mobsters got mad, he kept that poker face, calm, collected, untouchable. Federal agents raided the place not once but twice, and both times Dean slipped out through the back alley before they could cuff him. The danger only added to his aura. On slower nights, he'd sing with local dance bands under the stage name Dino Martini. That name, suave, classy, dangerous, fit him like a glove. It was the mix of charm and risk that would follow him for life. By 1938, Dino was broke and sharing a filthy New York apartment with his buddy and fellow singer, Sonny King. Desperation breeds creativity, and these two came up with a wild money-making plan, bare-knuckle boxing matches right in their living room. They'd charge neighbors 50 cents a head to watch them slug it out until someone dropped. The first night, Dean knocked Sonny out cold, and they pocketed $12. The fights became a thing, happening 3 or 4 times a week, until the walls were literally splattered with blood. When the landlord finally saw the mess, he threw them both out, but they didn't care. They were hustling, hungry, and surviving any way they could. Then came 1940, the year everything changed. Cleveland bandleader Sammy Watkins offered Dean $200 a week to tour, but there was one catch. Watkins told him straight up, Dino Crocetti sounded too ethnic, so they gave him a name that sounded clean, American, and made for the spotlight, Dean Martin. Just like that, a legend was born. From 1940 to 1943, Dean toured ballrooms all over the Midwest. The women swooned, the men admired his coolness, and the name Dean Martin started sticking. In 1941, he married Betty McDonald in Cleveland. Together, they had 4 children, Craig in 1942, Claudia in 1944, Gail in 1945, and Deanna in 1948. But while Betty stayed home raising the kids, Dean's suitcase stayed packed. He was always on the road, missing birthdays, first steps, and anniversaries. The love was real, but the distance broke them. By 1949, the marriage was over, right before Dean's world exploded into fame. But trouble always had a way of finding him. In 1942, police raided a gambling joint in Cleveland and arrested Dean along with a group of dealers and entertainers. The charges were serious, but just a few days later, everything mysteriously disappeared. Some whispered his old bootlegging friends had stepped in. Dean didn't deny it. In fact, he leaned into the bad boy mystique. The charming crooner with a shady past became his brand. Then came another twist of fate. In 1943, Dean was drafted into the Army, but after just 14 months, he was medically discharged for a hernia. While other men went to war, Dean stayed behind and became a star. He started performing at the Rio Bamba Room in New York, earning an incredible $500 a night. His charisma was electric. People couldn't take their eyes off him. By 1944, he had his own radio show, Songs by Dean Martin on NBC. 2 years later, Diamond Records signed him. His early singles didn't blow up the charts, but that voice was out there. Smooth, familiar, unforgettable. Then came the moment that changed comedy forever. On July 25th, 1946, Dean Martin and a young, wild comic named Jerry Lewis stepped onto the stage at the 500 Club in Atlantic City. A last-minute cancellation had left a hole in the lineup, and fate stepped in. Dean was making $150 a week, Jerry about the same. They had no idea that night would make them both legends. That night in Atlantic City changed everything. When Dean and Jerry took the stage, they had no act, no plan, just chaos and charm. Dean started to sing, smooth as silk, while Jerry pulled wild faces behind him, tripping, falling, and clowning like a man possessed. The crowd went insane, laughter, applause, the whole place shaking. Within days, the two were making $1,000 a week, and by September, they were pulling in $5,000. Hollywood came calling fast. The Copacabana booked them, NBC wanted them, and Paramount Pictures dropped a $50,000 per film deal on the table. In 1949, My Friend Irma hit theaters and made over $3 million. And here's the kicker, Dean and Jerry weren't even the leads, but their chemistry stole the whole show. Between 1949 and 1956, Martin and Lewis made 16 hit films, raking in $50 million for Paramount, a jaw-dropping number back then. Every movie premiere was chaos, fans screaming, theaters packed, flashbulbs exploding. Their live shows were even wilder. Crowds of 4,000 lined up outside the Paramount Theater in New York just for a chance to see them in person. Dean wasn't just funny, he was cool. He crooned, "That's Amore" in The Caddy, and boom, it shot to number 2 on the Billboard charts for 10 straight weeks. By 1953, over 2 million copies were sold, earning him his first gold record at 36. That song became his signature. But behind the smile, the partnership was starting to rot. Jerry kept growing, louder, flashier, and more controlling by the day. Dean, the calm one, started to feel like a sidekick in his own act. By 1952, they were both millionaires, earning over $1 million each per year, and their TV show, The Colgate Comedy Hour, made $40,000 an episode. But behind the curtain, it was war. One night in Vegas in 1954, things finally exploded. Jerry accused Dean of stealing the spotlight. Dean turned his back to walk off stage. Jerry grabbed him and punched him square in the mouth. Blood everywhere. Dean needed stitches. And still, the next night they performed like nothing happened. But something had changed forever. By 1956, it was done. On July 24th, the duo officially split. Their final movie, Hollywood or Bust, made $3 million, but it felt like the end of an era. One quiet press release ended a partnership that had ruled comedy for nearly a decade. The heartbreak was real. Fans couldn't believe it, and most people thought Dean Martin's career was over. For 10 years, he'd been the straight man, the relaxed half of Jerry's manic energy. Without Jerry, who was Dean? The public doubted him, but they had no idea what was coming next. Months before their breakup, Dean had quietly recorded a song at Capitol Records called "Memories Are Made of This." It featured harmonies by the Easy Riders and that signature lazy charm only Dean could pull off. When the record dropped, it shot straight to number 1 in January 1955, staying there for 5 straight weeks and selling over 3 million copies. That one song alone made Dean over $100,000, enough to buy his freedom, his respect, and his comeback. Dean wasn't chasing Jerry anymore. He was building his own lane. In 1954, he dropped Sway, mixing Latin rhythm with his effortless drawl, and it hit the top 10. Then in 1955, Inamorata climbed to number 8, showing the world he didn't need to belt like Sinatra or croon like Bing Crosby. Dean had his own sound, soft, smooth, and easy. By 1957, his album Dream with Dean sealed the deal, selling over 500,000 copies. The songs were intimate, the pacing slow, the mood pure magic. Dean didn't just sing songs, he floated through them, making every word feel like a glass of fine wine. That unbothered, effortless vibe became his brand, the man who made life look easy. In lounges, Vegas stages, and supper clubs from New York to Chicago, crowds leaned in just to catch every note. And in 1962, destiny called again, this time from Frank Sinatra himself. Sinatra had just launched Reprise Records and wanted Dean on board. Dean's first album with them, French Style, was packed with playful covers like C'est Si Bon. But the real deal? Reprise gave him total control over the music, the arrangements, everything. For the first time in his career, Dean Martin called the shots. By 1965, Dean had released over 40 albums and 20 top 40 singles. His Reprise deal alone was worth $1 million over 5 years. Massive for that time. But more than money, it gave him freedom. He wasn't Sinatra's backup anymore, so he was his own star. By 1957, Dean was headlining the legendary Copacabana in New York, making $10,000 a week, more than Sinatra himself. Yet, night after night, the audience demanded, "That's Amore." It was the song everyone knew him for. And he secretly hated it. Dean thought the fake Italian lyrics were corny, even calling it a joke in private. But he sang it anyway, more than 1,000 times, because that one joke paid for everything: the golf, the mansions, the cars, and the quiet life where he could finally sing the songs he actually loved. In August 1964, right at the height of Beatlemania, Dean Martin pulled off something nobody thought was possible. He dethroned the Beatles. His song, Everybody Loves. Somebody came out of nowhere and knocked A Hard Day's Night off the #1 spot. For one glorious week, Dean Martin, a man in his late 40s, outshined the biggest band in the world. The Beatles had ruled the charts for 5 straight weeks, so when Dean took the crown, jaws dropped across America. He recorded the song with the Ken Lane Trio, and it exploded, selling over 1 million copies and earning him his first gold record. When reporters asked how it felt to beat the Beatles, Dean smirked and said, "They just took a coffee break." That was classic Dean, cool under pressure, always ready with a joke. But behind that grin, trouble was brewing. In 1958, the IRS came knocking with cold hard numbers. Dean had hidden about $250,000 in foreign royalties tucked away in Swiss accounts. The fine was brutal: $100,000 plus back taxes and penalties. Headlines screamed, "Dean Martin caught in tax scandal." But did he panic? Not a chance. Instead, he turned the whole thing into a marketing move. In 1959, Dean launched Dino brand cigarettes, complete with his silhouette on the pack. The ads oozed swagger, premium smokes for the classy crowd. He flipped the script, turning a scandal into a brand. Only Dean could turn IRS drama into profit. That same year, Hollywood started to see a different side of him. Legendary director Howard Hawks cast Dean in Rio Bravo as Dude, a washed-up, broken-down drunk trying to crawl out of the bottle. It was his first serious role. No songs, no jokes, just grit. Filmed in the dusty sets of old Tucson studios, Dean threw himself into the part, trembling, sweating, bleeding. On screen, critics were stunned. The British Film Institute later called it the moment Dean Martin stopped being cool and started being human. The movie became a classic and was even preserved by the National Film Registry in 2014. Then came Ocean's 11 in 1960, the Rat Pack's masterpiece. They filmed all night in Las Vegas, then performed live shows at the Sands Hotel by day. No sleep, no scripts, just pure charisma and chaos. Scenes were improvised, jokes were born on the spot, and Shirley MacLaine even swiped one of Dean's own nightclub lines for a punchline. Vegas went wild. Fans called it the Summit. For 3 straight weeks in January 1960, they packed the Copa Room with over 34,000 people. On stage, Dean made it all look effortless, sipping, singing, and grinning like life was one big party. But insiders knew the truth. Joey Bishop once said, "Dean went home early while the rest of us drank. He wasn't there for the hangovers. He wanted to wake up for golf, not gossip." Dean kept the movie streak going, starring in Who Was That Lady? Alongside Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh. The CIA-themed comedy earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Then came Kiss Me Stupid, where he played a lounge singer named Dino, trying to seduce a housewife. The film was so racy that the Catholic Legion of Decency flat out condemned it. United Artists had to release it under a fake label just to dodge the backlash. But Dean didn't flinch. He laughed it off and kept working. In 1965's Marriage on the Rocks, he played Frank Sinatra's best friend in a story about 2 failing marriages. A fitting title since it was their last movie together for nearly 20 years. Around that time, Dean's personal life was also shifting behind the scenes. His first marriage to Betty McDonald had ended in 1949 after 9 years and 4 kids. Just weeks after the divorce, he married Jean Beager, the tall blonde beauty who became his second wife. Together, they had 3 more children, Dean Paul Jr., Richie, and Gina. They stayed married for 24 years, but the cracks were always there. Jean stayed loyal, even during Dean's very public affairs. When they divorced in 1973, she never remarried. It said everything about their bond. Complicated but unbroken in its own way. By the mid-60s, Dean Martin wasn't just famous, he was loaded. Back in 1951, he and Jerry Lewis were already earning over $1 million a year, equivalent to more than $120 million today. But for Dean, the money wasn't the goal anymore. He wanted control. So in 1965, he made a power move, launching The Dean Martin Show on NBC. It ran for 9 seasons, and by 1967, it was one of the top 10 shows on American television. NBC signed him to a $34 million contract, unheard of at the time, for just 3 more years. And here's where Dean's genius kicked in. His contract let him skip rehearsals. He'd just stroll in, crack a joke, flash that $1 million smile, and nail it in one take. Fans thought he was drunk on stage, but the glass in his hand wasn't whiskey. It was apple juice. The slurred words, the loose grin, the tipsy charm. It was all part of the act. Dean Martin didn't just outlast the Beatles, he outsmarted Hollywood, turning scandals, exhaustion, and chaos into an image of effortless cool. And the craziest part, he made it look so natural that the world believed it every single time. Dean Martin had everyone fooled. He wasn't drunk, he was acting. His son, Richie Martin, later revealed that the whiskey glass was nothing more than a prop. The boozy charm was all part of the performance. In 1973, Dean flipped the script once again, turning The Dean Martin Show into The Dean Martin Comedy Hour and launching what became his biggest late career hit, the Celebrity Roasts, the very first roast, Bob Hope, and it was electric. Then came Frank Sinatra, Jimmy Stewart, Lucille Ball, and a parade of Hollywood royalty, lining up to get lovingly roasted by Dean and his crew. The events were taped at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, where the air crackled with laughter, smoke, and star power. But tragedy hit on November 21st, 1980, when a massive fire tore through the hotel, killing 85 people and injuring hundreds more. Production stopped cold, Hollywood went silent. When Dean finally returned to finish his contract, something in him had dimmed. The smile was still there, but the spark wasn't. Then, in a moment that stunned the world, Dean reunited with his old partner, Jerry Lewis. It was Labor Day weekend, 1976, during the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon, and Frank Sinatra himself set the moment up. More than 85 million people watched live as the two men came face to face for the first time in 20 years. Jerry broke down in tears, Dean grinned that soft half smile, and backstage they shared a quiet talk. Jerry apologized and Dean forgave him. No cameras, no scripts, just two legends closing a wound that had lasted decades. Some say they spoke every day after that. Others claim they never talked again. No one really knows. But for one night, the Kings of Comedy were a team again. Long before that reunion, though, Dean had proven he didn't need anyone to carry him. In 1966, he stepped into a whole new spotlight as secret agent Matt Helm. In The Silencers, Dean played a retired spy dragged back into the game, and what started as a James Bond spoof turned into a full-blown box office sensation. The movie raked in $16.3 million, making Dean one of Hollywood's hottest stars all over again. Audiences couldn't get enough of him. The jokes, the women, the effortless cool. Surrounded by glamorous co-stars like Stella Stevens and Sid Charisse, Dean cracked wise, dodged bullets, and saved the day with a wink and a martini. Columbia Pictures saw the gold and moved fast. The sequel, Murderers Row, dropped just 10 months later and became the 11th highest grossing film of 1966. The success didn't stop there. The Ambushers came in 1967, and The Wrecking Crew hit theaters in 1968, starring the radiant Sharon Tate in what many call her best performance ever. Bruce Lee himself trained her for the role, teaching her the moves, the balance, the power. She shined on screen. Confident, fierce, unforgettable. But 6 months later, tragedy struck. On August 9th, 1969, Sharon Tate was brutally murdered in her home by the Manson family. Dean was shattered. This wasn't just a co-star to him, this was a friend. A kind soul he'd laughed and rehearsed with her death hit him hard. When Columbia announced a 5th Matt Helm movie, The Ravagers, Dean refused to do it. He walked away from the franchise completely. Columbia tried to punish him by freezing his profits from Murderers Row, but Dean didn't flinch. He wouldn't cash another check tied to tragedy. That was the end of Matt Helm and the end of that chapter in his life. 2 years later, Dean roared back in a new hit, Airport 1970. Made on a $10 million budget, it went on to gross $128 million, smashing records and surpassing Spartacus as Universal's biggest hit ever. The film scored 9 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, and even won one, cementing Dean as a serious leading man once again. Then in 1971, he went bold one last time, starring in Something Big, a dusty western about a reckless outlaw who kidnaps a woman to trade her for a Gatling gun. The movie was loud, wild, and filmed in the blazing deserts of Durango, Mexico. It was Dean's final leading role, the last time he carried a film on his shoulders. After that, he'd had enough of long shoots and late nights. The fame, the pressure, the grind, he was done chasing it. Dean shifted his focus to what he did best, entertaining. Throughout the 1970s, he found new life on television. The Dean Martin Show evolved into the legendary Dean Martin Celebrity Roast, and from 1973 onward, the roast became America's favorite guilty pleasure. Week after week, stars lined up to get roasted by Dean, and he made it look effortless. Bob Hope kicked it off, and before long, everyone from Sinatra to Muhammad Ali sat in the hot seat. Over the next decade, Dean roasted 54 celebrities, mostly from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. The jokes were sharp, the laughter was loud, and the drinks, real or not, kept flowing. It was light, it was easy, and it was exactly Dean's pace. In the middle of that golden run, life threw him another twist. On April 25th, 1973, just after divorcing Jean, Dean married Katherine Hahn, a 23-year-old receptionist he'd met through a Beverly Hills salon. He was 57 and smitten. The wedding took place at Dean's Bel Air home and later moved to the Beverly Hills Hotel for the celebration. Dean even adopted her daughter Sasha, trying to give her the family life he'd always struggled to hold together. But the love didn't last. The age gap, the fame, the distance, it all caught up. After just 3 years, the marriage ended in 1976. Dean was heartbroken, but true to form, he didn't make a spectacle of it. He just smiled, lit another cigarette, and moved on, the same way he always did. On November 10th, 1976, Dean Martin finalized his divorce from Katherine Hahn, quietly, without drama, just the way he liked it. His personal life was always tangled. 3 marriages, 8 children, and more heartbreak than anyone ever knew. But the bond he shared with his son, Dean Paul Martin, better known to the world as Dino Jr., ran deeper than fame, deeper than showbiz, deeper than anything else in his life. Dino Jr. was born on November 17, 1951, and carried that Martin charm effortlessly. By 1979, he had stepped into Hollywood himself, starring opposite Ali MacGraw in Players. The movie didn't just get attention, it earned him a Golden Globe nomination, but acting wasn't what really made him come alive. Dino had a different fire in his heart, flying. On November 5th, 1980, he joined the U.S. Air Force, training hard to become a fighter pilot. Eventually, he earned his spot in the California Air National Guard, flying high-performance jets most men only dreamed about. His fellow pilots said Dino was the real deal, calm, focused, and fearless. Dean was beyond proud, not because his son was famous, but because he was grounded, humble, and brave. "He's a good man," Dean once told a friend, and he meant it. But then came the day that shattered Dean Martin's world forever. On March 21st, 1987, Captain Dean Paul Martin took off from March Air Force Base in an F-4C Phantom jet for what was supposed to be a routine training flight. A sudden snowstorm rolled in, thick and blinding. Radar tracked the plane at 19,300 feet. And seconds later, it plunged over 4,000 feet, slamming into Mount San Gorgonio at nearly 400 miles per hour. The explosion was so violent that rescuers couldn't reach the wreckage for 6 days. Both Dino and his weapons officer, Captain Ramon Ortiz, were killed instantly. When they found the crash site, it was unrecognizable. The loss destroyed Dean. The boozy swagger that had once been just apple juice in a glass suddenly became real. This time, he wasn't acting. Dean stopped caring about the spotlight. He canceled shows, avoided cameras, and withdrew from the world that had once adored him. Friends said he was a ghost of himself, quiet, heavy-eyed, and broken in a way that fame could never fix. He never recovered. A year later, in March 1988, Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. tried to lift him out of the darkness. They invited him to join their reunion tour, calling it Together Again. When the tour kicked off in Oakland, over 14,500 fans packed the arena, screaming for the legendary trio. But Dean only lasted a week. The crowds, the noise, the endless travel, it all felt empty now. His friends told the press he was sick, but the truth was darker. He was drowning in grief. When Dean dropped out, Liza Minnelli replaced him, and the show was renamed The Ultimate Event. But for Dean, the curtain had closed for good, the drinking worsened, his health began to fail, and the sparkle that had carried him through 5 decades of fame slowly faded. Years of smoking finally caught up to him. He developed emphysema, and by the early 1990s, he rarely left his Beverly Hills home. In 1993, doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer. The tumors were spreading fast to his kidneys, to his liver, but Dean didn't want surgery, didn't want chemo, didn't want hospitals. He was done fighting. He told friends, "I'm just waiting to die." Sinatra begged him to get treatment. Sammy tried too, but Dean simply smiled and said no. He'd lived enough lives for 10 men. He quit smoking that year, but it was too late. His body had already given up. He spent his final days quietly, surrounded by family and a few close friends. Visitors said he still smiled. Still polite, still Dean, but his eyes had that faraway look, like he'd already made peace with what was coming. On December 25th, 1995, at 3:30 a.m., Dean Martin passed away in his Beverly Hills home from acute respiratory failure. He was 78 years old. The news spread instantly, and then the world stopped to mourn. The Las Vegas Strip dimmed its lights in his honor. Sinatra called him a brother. Jerry Lewis, the man who had once shared the stage, the fame, and the laughter with him, was on tour when he got the call. He broke down on stage and couldn't finish his set. Dean's funeral was held privately at Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Beverly Hills. Around 200 people attended.
This is after Dean died. You said you went to Dean's funeral and you spoke at Dean's funeral. And after he passed away, you said, "I lost my partner and best friend, the man who made me the man I am today."
Including Gregory Peck, Tony Bennett, and Jerry Lewis himself. The mood was heavy, but the stories were warm. Jerry stood up and said what the tabloids never did. Dean was more than cool. He was kind, he was strong, and he never needed to prove it. After his death, more stories came out. Stories that showed just how smart Dean really was. The world had seen the laid-back crooner, the tipsy playboy, the man who floated through fame with a grin. But behind that smooth exterior was a shrewd businessman. Dean had built a real estate empire in Las Vegas quietly, without flash or noise. Land he'd bought for $150,000 in the 1960s later sold for over $12 million in the 1990s. His estate was valued at $30 million, including his iconic Beverly Hills mansion, bought for just $120,000, later worth nearly $28 million. When his daughter Deanna found out, she broke down crying, realizing her father hadn't just lived for laughs. He'd built something lasting, and that long-running rumor about the apple juice in his glass, 100% true. Years later, Jerry Lewis confirmed it himself. Most nights, Jerry said, it wasn't booze. It was juice Dean pretended to be drunk so everyone else could relax. The act that made him famous wasn't a mask. It was his secret weapon. Dean wasn't stumbling. He was in control. Dean Martin lived fast, laughed hard, and left behind a legacy of effortless charm that no one has ever matched. He outlasted scandals, heartbreak, and loss, and did it all with a wink and a smile. What do you think about Dean's incredible life? The fame, the pain, and the secrets behind that easy grin. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with others who still love the King of Cool. And as always, see you on the next one.